Welcome to the Success Story Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Clary. On this podcast, I have candid interviews with execs, celebrities, politicians, and other notable figures, all who have achieved success through both wins and losses, to learn more about their life, their ideas, and their insights. I sit down with leaders and mentors and unpack their story to help pass those lessons on to others through both experiences and tactical strategy for business professionals, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. Without further ado, another episode of the Success Story Podcast. All right. I am sitting down with Dan Martell, who is the founder of SaaS Academy. Now, he's done a ton of things over his career, known in the business community for his successes in life, husband, father of two boys, founder of multiple tech startups, sold 3 of them, 5 times founder, an investor in 38 plus companies and probably counting, millionaire by age 27, SaaS business coach, founder of Clarity, founder of Flowtown, which was acquired in 11, founder of Spheric Technologies, acquired in 08, mentor at 500 Startups, Grow Labs, and the C100.org. I saw even on your Twitter, you worked with Proposify, you worked with ClickFunnels. So you're working with the best and brightest startups. You had an incredible career. So Dan, thank you for sitting down. I love to hear your story and what you're doing.
Scott, man, wow, what an intro. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. You let me where you want to go, but I'm a giver, so I will. I'm committed to giving you 110% and being open and honest about all stories. So let's tee it up with your background, because you highlight your background a lot when you go on your website. You speak about your successes and your failures. So walk me through, so people who don't know you can tee up how you got to where you are today. You say 5x founder, 3x exit, some successes, some failures. Yeah, I mean, I've got a unique background. If I just go back how I even became an entrepreneur, I grew up second oldest of 4, got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11, grew up in a house where my mom was an alcoholic and my dad was in sales, always on the road. And, by the time I was 13, I got introduced to drugs, and really my life just spiraled out of control, in and out of group home, crisis centers, rehab centers, all the way to the point that at 16, I found myself high and drunk in a stolen car, trying to get away from the police with a handgun sitting next to me in the bag. Because I told myself if I got caught by the police, I was going to pull the gun and let the police do their job. So I ended up trying to get away from, the police in this high-speed chase, smashed in the side of a house. I went for the handgun, and it got stuck. And before I knew it, the door opened up, the police grabbed me, threw me in the back of the cop car, and I woke up sober the next day wondering, who was looking out for me, because I didn't expect to be alive. And due to the severity of my crimes, I ended up getting sentenced to about 9 months. 6 months of that I spent in an adult jail. I got released to a rehab center called Portage. And I spent 11 months in therapy as a 17-year-old, rebuilding my relationships with my family, building the trust, rebuilding my confidence. Honestly, Scott, I just felt I had no self-esteem. I had very little confidence, and just working on myself. And it was at the end of that program, I was helping Rick, the maintenance guy, clean out one of the camps. It was an old church camp. And in a room, there was this old 486 computer with a yellow book on Java programming sitting next to it. And I just opened it up and followed chapter 1, and I got the computer to say, "Hello world." And I thought I was a computer genius, or at least that's what I thought at the time. And that one moment, programming and software became my new addiction. And when I got out, entrepreneurship, the ultimate personal development program. And that's kind of how I ended up, at a young age, starting a company called Maritime Vacation that completely failed. Then I did MB Host, which was another failure. And it wasn't until I was 24 that I finally found some success on the back end of finally reading business books. I'd read 100 plus technical books, software programming, architecture, database, but not business. And this first book called Love is a Killer App by Tim Sanders really just shifted my whole on life, relationships, knowledge. And that's why I'm here today. It's why I'm alive. It's why I am blessed to live the life I live with my wife and my 2 kids, and, being involved in all these incredible entrepreneurs, companies as a coach.
That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. When I usually ask about successes and failures, people speak about career choices they made that were a mistake, perhaps a failed company. But you definitely are about the full spectrum of all-time low to where you are today. With that's a tough spot to be in at 16, man. That's not a fun place at all. So as you built these out, speak to me about your experience building out companies, why some of them failed, why they started to succeed. And I think that can sort of dovetail into your current success, the lessons you learned.
Yeah, I mean, having started from, less than zero, really a hole, right? A lot of the early journey for me was just personal development and like figuring out, how do you communicate? How do you build teams? So a lot of the early failures, Maritime Vacation, NB Host, was around not understanding a thing called marketing, right? Not understanding how sales conversations happened. Again, I wasn't reading any books. I literally thought I'm just going to be a business person. We didn't even call it entrepreneurship back then. It's just I'm going to be like self-employed, which was a dirty word back in the day. This is 1998, 99. I just slowly learned that there's a cap to how much you can physically do in 100 hours a week. And you need to be able to build teams. And to build teams, you need to create something that's interesting. Because if somebody's smart and able to help you out, why would they work with you versus somebody else? And so it was like learning about storytelling, understanding how to present a solution to a customer. But before you even present that, understand how to uncover their real desires or pains or challenges that they're trying to solve. I mean, I didn't have any formal training in sales. And today I've sold over $50 million worth of software myself. I build sales teams now, but personally hand-to-hand sales. And that's on the back end of, buying all the sales books from the Zig Ziglars to, Brian Tracy, like literally just driving around, burning fuel because it was a forcing function for me to listen to these books. Back in the day it was on CDs and prior to that tapes, to just try to teach myself the skill set to succeed, So, I mean, what are the lessons I learned? One, if you're not able to play nice with other people, there's definitely a ceiling and a cap on your success. Two, if you don't invest in your knowledge, like if I went back now and I said, I get kids reaching out to me, some of them get inherited, some of them have $100,000 they saved up and they go, what should I do with my money? I would take 10% of it and reinvest it in yourself, minimum. Like, you should really invest in yourself until you get to a point where you're so good that, I have an unlimited budget today for my personal education, right? Like if I'm trying to start a new business or invest in an industry I don't know, I will pay to get in front of the world's best people in that topic, because speed to me matters more than anything. And I'm not shy to admit that I don't know, which when I started off, I 100% had a ton of, lack of confidence to be able to even admit that stuff. Today, I almost wear it like a badge of honor. Like my teams and all my companies are way smarter than I am at any of their skills. And because of that, I don't have to work so hard. So there's just been every lesson out there. I had to learn and continue to iterate to try to become the person who can achieve that next level of success. I think it's a never ending game and it's a beautiful one.
And so now that makes it tees up, and it makes a lot of sense as to why, after you started to learn these lessons, and I 100% align with what you're saying about, if you don't want to be the smartest person in the room all the time, you go seek out those mentors and that guidance to help you grow and scale. And that's probably the most powerful recipe for success somebody can pick up on, just to go seek out that guidance, because you don't know what you don't know. Now, that makes sense as to why you started to have these successes. So after, you exited 1, exited 2, exited 3, now you're starting to invest in companies. You probably could just retire and never work again. Why did you want to start SaaS Academy? What does SaaS Academy do that, for example, even perhaps like a Y Combinator wouldn't do?
Yeah. So, on the why do I work when I don't have to? Because I became a multimillionaire when I was 27. I think it was it Jim Rohn famously said, people tell him all the time, like, if I had $1 million, I wouldn't work a day in my life. And I think his reply is, well, I think that's why God sees it fit that you never do, because it's not very productive, And I love that reply, because essentially it's, people that know how to create value can't see themselves doing anything less, right? What ends up happening if you do it right, many people don't. If you do it right, is your day is full of things that bring you energy, that light you up, that excite you, that you get to work on, that makes you feel like meaningful and impactful and create a legacy. And honestly, I'd be doing what I do every day, even if it didn't have any financial gain, just because I love doing it. So the byproduct of trying to create as much value as you can for other people is the financial reward, but I don't do it for the financial reward anymore, because I've slowly over time figured out how to change the rules of the game so that it's an infinite game. So a lot of people that don't have the economic wealth to feel that, and that's why, like, the truth is if you took all the world's wealth and you distributed it to everybody evenly, within a few months, it would be back in the same hands of all those people, right? Because there's almost like a wealth knowledge process that needs to be understood. And if you don't have that, even if I gave you $10 million tomorrow, I guarantee in 3 years, and you have enough stats around people winning the lottery or professional athletes, that they just don't understand the process of maintaining or creating wealth. So all that being said, SaaS Academy is a coaching process. The way I thought about it is I wanted to create a community for other software entrepreneurs that I needed when I was starting. It's totally different than Y Combinator and many other accelerators. Most of my clients have actually been in our alumni of those programs. And I always say it's got content, community, and coaching. Because I only focus and coach B2B SaaS entrepreneurs, software as a service, that's what SaaS stands for. I have about 350 proven playbooks, like literally swipe and deploy frameworks around what I call the ACEs growth engine. So attract, convert, expand, and scale. So, demand generation, sales velocity, customer success, expansion revenue, and just team and scaling the company OS. A lot of the accelerators, they're more focused on early stage. I only focus post product market fit. So once you have product market fit and you have the beginnings of some traction, I'm going to help you pour rocket fuel into that engine. But I always say, you can't come to me too early, because if you're driving a Volkswagen, we throw rocket fuel in the Volkswagen, it's going to explode, right? So I'm very selective on who I work with to make sure that they're ready for that level of coaching. I don't make any, I don't miscommunicate that I will drive people way outside their comfort zone. I'll hold them accountable to a level of excellence and execution that they're probably not familiar with. And because of that, we're going to win. And that's all I want in life for my coaching clients. I have a whole nonprofit side of my life a lot softer with, and the people I serve there. But if it comes to people that want to be pushed and be a high performer, I know what that looks like. I'm an example of it, honestly. And I feel like a lot of coaches can be sometimes out of integrity with that. For me, I'm not. I teach what I do, and people get results, or they can't stick around, because I'm not interested in having people invest in just being part of a group and not do any of the work.
And I'm curious, I appreciate that. But I'm curious, so you mentioned there's product market fit. There's a certain person that you actually work with. How would somebody know that they're ready to work with you? What does that look like outside of just product market fit?
Normally they're at least at 10 to 25K monthly recurring revenue.
Okay.
Right. So that, and product market fit looks different for SMB, mid-market, or enterprise as a customer that you serve. So if you're at enterprise, I would say 3 customers. Your revenue might be a lot more than that monthly, because big companies pay more, but at least 3 enterprise companies, mid-market, at least 10. And then on the small side, at least 100. You've got a technical ability to write code. So you've solved the building the thing problem. And you've got some resemblance of a marketing and sales process, or at least it's happening. Those things would have to be true for me even to have the conversation. But yeah, that's kind of like the litmus test at the bottom end.
And I'm curious, where does the machine break? Where do you find entrepreneurs making the biggest mistakes when they get to that point and can't scale past that?
Typically, it's the reverse of what they think. So I call it chocolate broccoli. People come to me because they think they need more customers, and what they really need is a better model. So what does a better model look like? There's only 3 levers in SaaS. It's top of funnel, retention, and monetization, right? So most of the time, people have a retention problem, but they don't want to admit it, or they think it's good enough. So we need to keep more customers than we're losing, because at scale, that percent loss per month gets to the point where you'll hit what's called the growth ceiling. So retention's number 1. Number 2 is monetization. So expansion revenue through upsells, cross-sells, add-ons, essentially your pricing. Most SaaS founders don't understand pricing economics and psychology, and that is probably the lowest hanging fruit. Normally, clients build too much stuff, and they don't have a clear understanding of value drivers and how people should transition in between different plans, and how to structure their plans to create that sales motion to pull people through that expansion, right? So that's the big thing where it's just, are they doing it wrong? Yes. Do they even know they're not doing it? No. These are things that if you haven't been doing this a long time, it's your first time building a software company, you've spent most of your time just trying to figure out how to get this thing built, that you didn't spend any time on pricing optimization. And then finally, once we have that, then it's all about sales velocity, right? Like, how do you pick the right customer, which I call a perfect fit customer, a ready to buy customer. So how do you decide who to focus on, who to sell to? How do you get the message in the market appropriately? What channels do you use? And then once you get their interest, what's the conversion process to get them from opportunity to customer, and get that, done in the shortest amount of time, so you don't have these long sales cycles? That's at a high level, and this is all covered in my ACES growth engine framework. But most people start at the top, attract, and then they go to convert, expand, scale. I almost start at the bottom, because I need to make sure the model, the unit economics of your process actually makes sense to scale. Because if it doesn't, then we can waste a lot of time and money on marketing that's just not going to produce the long-term revenue retention that you need.
And no, I appreciate. I think that as if somebody's listening to this, even that awareness of what could be broken can drive them to look to the right resources, and yourself, or even a ton of others. But to understand all those points that you just mentioned that could potentially break when trying to scale, I think that's very important. And I think that you sort of uncovered that recipe, quote unquote recipe for success when it comes to scaling startups. A lot of the things that you're mentioning, I hear emulated from a lot of other very successful sales leaders. We're talking like Mark Roberge from HubSpot. He emulated, especially the churn piece, like mitigating the loss, plugging that leaky bucket. That's another one that I hear a lot that people don't focus on. I've seen it a lot. And I don't want to, reiterate everything you just mentioned, but I think that as people try and scale their company, it's really smart to understand, like you said, these things that are going to be huge growth inhibitors. Now, I'm curious about, these are very tactical growth inhibitors. In terms of perhaps personality traits, or I don't want to say that there's a perfect kind of startup founder, but what are the personal traits or growth traits that somebody should focus on internally that can allow them to be successful? Or is there just that kind of person that has the grit, determination, drive, perseverance, self-awareness, empathy, whatever that is the most important trait to be successful as an entrepreneur? Because you work with so many.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think these traits can be developed and taught and learned. I think there's a natural, you need to be a certain type of person to build a Mark Zuckerberg or equivalent, right? So there are these like outliers in the data set, but there's this like very large medium, the mean of people. And when I look at that, most of my clients are bootstrapped, incredibly successful. They all have a lot of characteristics. One is they're very growth minded, meaning that they're willing to invest in themselves, hence why they're coaching with me. They're willing to invest in themselves because they have confidence that with that knowledge, they can do better than without it. Most people don't trust themselves. When you ask somebody like, why do you not hire a coach? They'll make up a bunch of reasons, but the truth is they don't trust themselves to get knowledge to implement to get a return. That's the only reason why you wouldn't hire somebody who's been there before to help you. Because if I was going to, climb Everest, you'd be an idiot to not want to go learn from people that have been to the summit of Everest before you attempt it. That would just be honestly suicidal to anybody trying to do it. Yet people do that every day in their business. And I think the reason why is they just don't have a lot of confidence in their abilities to translate that information into execution. So that's one thing. So the people that are going to succeed have a level of confidence about their ability to execute that most people don't. They're very much in tuned with feedback. What does this look like? It means that they're willing to pick up the phone and call customers to get feedback. They're willing to talk to their team and ask them their team questions like, what do you need more from me as a leader? They're willing to instrument the metrics to know what's really going on in the business. A lot of founders that don't have the product or financial metrics around their business, I believe it's because they just don't want to know. They'd rather not know, right? They put their head in the sand than actually pull that together, because literally there's so many tools out there that'll give it to you for free that for you not to know what your churn or your expansion revenue or your activations are, or your trial conversions or whatever they are, it's really just ignorance around getting that information and being scared to know. It all comes down to fear. Scott, that's a reality. So, but the traits, it's those things. They're curious. Curious is a big one. They're driven. They have a vision. This is a big one. They have a vision for their future that's way bigger than where they're at today, and they're able to expand that as they expand. I think what happens sometimes, people peter out because they actually hit, I would just love to make $100,000 a year, and then they hit it, and then they just stay there forever, which is fine. It's just not what I do. What I do is push people way beyond what they think is possible by showing them examples of that and reinforcing within them that confidence and courage and clarity of execution to make sure that comes a reality.
And when they're looking for someone like you, there's a lot of coaches out there. How do they find somebody who's right for them? How do they audit that coach?
Yeah, I had a lengthy discussion. One of my clients, Liam, he's the founder of Time Doctor, and he actually interviewed me. So if people want to search that interview, how to hire a coach,
him too. He's coming on here too.
Yeah. But he's the one that asked me that question. Here's how I hired my coaches. I want somebody who's been there before. Okay. So Marcy, for example, one of my coaches back in the day, she built a company, brought it public, 5,000 employees, right? So been there before, has had results with other people. I think a lot of people are idiot savants in the sense that they know they can do it themselves, but they're not really good at getting other people the same results. So I want to know that they've been able to get other people similar results. I would reference check the crap out of who they are. I think you should back channel. So if you see somebody on a Facebook ad, you should see if you have mutual friends, reach out to them. Is this person a good person? What have you heard? How long have you known them for? A lot of fly-by-night coaches in the industry. It's the unfortunate part that I'm okay with, because I understand that, performance over time is the best example of success. Is just keep being consistent. Do what you do over long periods of time, and eventually you'll separate yourself from everybody else. But yeah, there's a lot of coaches out there that come off and they're very flashy and they're selling with material things, but when it comes down to it, their students' results should be speaking for themselves. And that's a big thing that I pride myself on is client wins on a monthly basis and progress over everything than really good marketing per se. So I don't know. I think it's a personal decision. If you don't resonate with the person, if you're listening to me and you don't like the way I talk, you really shouldn't work with me, because that's not going to get better. Yeah. That's probably going to get worse. And I think that's important to know is you need to find the person that you vibe with and that you feel is going to provide you with honest, direct, clear feedback. And if you don't feel that, don't force it. right? I think it's a very personal decision on who you coach with.
Very good advice. Very good advice. I have a couple rapid fire questions from your insight in your career. Before I shift over, I just wanted to open the floor. Was there anything that I didn't know about SaaS Academy or what you're working on now that I should have asked that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, no, I mean, so the way I look at my life is I've got a charity nonprofit component called Creators where I work with at-risk youth, helping them build their confidence through building businesses. So that's like my personal give back. SaaS Academy and coaching is a big pillar of my life. And then the other one is my investments. You know, it's actually 40 companies now.
Oh,
I'm now in the, thank you. Well, now I'm in the acquisition phase. So I'm buying SaaS companies to put into my portfolio, not just angel investing. And so like, that's kind of how I split up my time. I'm still very much an operator. Very likely that I'll be the CEO of another SaaS company in the future that I plan on taking to either public offering or, you know, $1 billion valuation. But coaching will always be part of my life because I'm fascinated in the process of helping people curate a different worldview to have them take actions around things that otherwise feel extremely uncomfortable and scary like that. Mm-hmm. That's the tactical stuff that I teach people. To me, I almost take it as table stakes like that. You should just do that stuff. What I'm more fascinated in is why do people not make those decisions when they're clear as day? And how do you get somebody in the least amount of time to reset that perspective so that they feel more confident and comfortable making the decision that they're not taking that they know they should be doing? So coaching will always be part of my life. It may be reduced in the future if I'm busy with, you know, actively CEOing a company, but that's just does give people perspective on how I look at my week.
As I migrate into these sort of career insight questions, I think that what you're doing as a coach and you're sort of taking it outside of just the tactical. I just want to comment on this briefly because I see so many coaches that just focus on the tactical and ignore the human psychology component of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I've spoken to lots of entrepreneurs before, both on this podcast and just in my career. And I think that, like you mentioned, that fear, that psychological component is such a huge piece. It's vastly misunderstood when somebody just wants to turn a side hustle into their full-time job, especially as like a technical co-founder or whatnot. If you can code the thing yourself and it just starts making some money on the side, and then all of a sudden you want to scale it, there's a huge psychological component. Depression, anxiety, fear, all these things that are these emotions you didn't expect when something is being successful, right? So I appreciate that you sort of dive into that and you focus on it. Because a lot of people can replicate those tactical, but it's tough for the psychological. Anyways.
Mindset. If you want to do it in a way that doesn't debilitate you or cause pain to the people you love the most. I mean, that's the sad part. Cool. Scott, I've got a few minutes. I'm late for another call, but I want to give you your rapid fire. So
I want to do a quick and then get some places to go find you online. Where do you continue to grow, learn? What's your outlets and resources?
I today invest in people. So anything I want to do, I literally just pay the top people to come into my world and reverse engineer what they're doing. So right now I've been spending a lot of time in the world of private equity, and I literally reached out to the top 3 guys in my space, offered to pay them. They were kind enough to refuse, and now I get to spend time with them. And that's my where I'm at today. That's the way I do it.
Okay, perfect. 2 more. A lesson you would tell your younger self?
Spend real money in yourself earlier. Start with books, but definitely move into other stuff way sooner. Yeah.
And what does success mean for you?
That I was an example of possibility to as many people as possible.
I love it. That's a good answer. It's a very good answer. Where do people go find more? What's your website, social, Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram stories is the behind the scenes. danmartell.com. Charles Martell is the business stuff. LinkedIn. I'm active on all social networks. For fun, come check me out on TikTok. I'm not dancing, but I'm trying to add some entertainment. And YouTube is where I teach everything I learn for free.
All right. That's all I got. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Amazing conversation, man. Have a great day.
That's all for today. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Success Story Podcast. You can download or stream this podcast wherever podcasts are available, including iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many others. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, and peers. Please leave us a rating on iTunes. It takes about 30 seconds as it allows other people to find our podcast and lets our amazing guests reach even more people with their message. And remember, any rating is fine as long as it contains 5 stars. I'm Scott Clary from the Success Story Podcast, signing off.